I'm just going to start actually with Julia, because it sounds as if, from my limited briefing, as if in fact Centrica set off on a sort of ambition. Kind of didn't, it sort of ran into the sand, and you've been brought in to reboot it, or perhaps to bring it together in a new way.
Yes, indeed. Unless any of you have been living under a rock, you will have noticed that energy is now the least trusted sector below the banks.
Don't worry, we're below you.
You're not. This is a number of reasons that sit behind it, and there is a huge perception around the level of profitability that we as a company undertake, and there's a big gap in terms of what actually we produce in terms of profits and what consumers understand. And I think that the points that have been raised this morning really resonate with me in terms of that particular aspect. In terms of what that demonstrates is we're not meeting customers' needs, and customers are reacting in the way that they have to the energy industry because of that particular reason. As Jon alluded to, 2 years ago, we started on a journey around the key to restoring trust within our sector and within our business was around having clarity of purpose. And so we're very privileged to be here today, having discussed many times with Lachlan and Charles our journey and what might be the keys to rebooting it. As with others, we are really struggling with this question of our purpose. And I think, as Louise highlighted in her presentation, what is demonstrated is that we're probably more transparent than anyone else. We have a huge annual report of over 150 pages. We've won awards for our CR reporting. But that just shows that we are transparent. It hasn't adjusted the trust factor, or is it necessarily transparent in the way that people want us to be transparent? And I think Jon alluded to that as well. So our journey started with talking to our employees. We have 30,000 employees in the UK and in North America. And we asked them what motivated them to come to work every day. What was it about our organisation that made them want to stay? And they said 2 reasons. They said, we want to help people and we want to secure energy for the future. And that's what became our purpose, helping people today and securing energy for the future. And we're very proud of a number of things that we do. The company started as the Gas, Coke and Light Company in 1812 with the purpose to provide gas and light to the people of London with the significant good of the people in mind. Our industry is the only one that's directly correlated from a GDP perspective over the last 100 years. And we have the most trusted engineers in Britain. We also do more than anyone else to help vulnerable people in England. We provide almost £400 million to target beneficiaries in what we do. But we suffer from regulatory and political reflex in regulation and in discourse in society. And so we really wanted to bring our purpose to life, and we started on a journey of doing that through creating an investment fund that I have the privilege of running called Ignite. We invest in small, medium enterprises that are innovating in the energy sector, who are delivering more than just financial returns. They're delivering social outcomes to those that live and work in Britain. And we've now deployed almost £5.5 million worth of capital over 8 projects to those particular businesses. But when we started to think about this in a broader context, which I was asked to do earlier this year, we saw in a lot of the businesses that we were investing in that didn't really resonate with us as an organisation, and we really needed to think differently about how we bring our purpose to life. And there's a practicality aspect. My chief executive, after meeting with Charles and Lachlan, said, "Isn't this all just a bit motherhood and apple pie?" And on one level it is, but on a practical level, it really doesn't have to be. And it's really about the cultural aspects that Jon was talking to in terms of a corporate's personality, the individuals that work within it, and understanding their motivations and bringing them together. But our purpose today doesn't allow our people to make concrete decisions that drive us in a direction. We have major infrastructure projects we need to undertake. We need to look at the new application of technology. We need to spend time with those most affected by energy prices rising, and we need to work with our colleagues in the building industry to upgrade the fabric of the building stock within the UK in order to become more energy efficient. And we're constantly balancing these three aspects of affordability, security of supply, and the ongoing investment that's required in our business. So how do we guide our people? We need our purpose to be culturally embedded, to be human, and to be brought to life. We need our customers to be clear on what we stand for, and recognise that, as the panel was just saying, incentives that are of a financial nature through our anthropological studies show that actually people are motivated by purpose first, autonomy and mastery. So we need to create something where our customers can value what we do, our people feel proud about what they do, and that wider society benefits from us being in business. We're doing a lot of work behind the scenes right now to make that happen, and it starts with the customer. We're working on a large programme of innovation, which will be the major disintermediation of the energy sector, with smart meters being installed in all homes within the UK. We have within our DNA to do that major upgrade and major infrastructural programme when we created the largest activity since the war effort of making everyone able to have gas in the 1970s and 80s. And we're on the next journey and the next cycle of that as happens. But in order for us to be around 100 years from now and continue our legacy, we need to continue to adapt, evolve and change. And that starts with innovation, energy efficiency, culture, incentives, decision making, and looks across the wider parts of our business. We have to remember that business is a collection of individuals that come together for a common purpose, and therefore we must be clear of what that purpose is.
Julia, thank you very much. That was a very interesting voyage, and I know there'll be a lot of questions. Andrew, can you take us to the Vodafone story?
Yeah, if I just, firstly, thank you very much indeed for inviting me. Thank you, Cardinal Archbishop, for asking us to be involved in this and the blueprint. I think it's a fascinating journey, and we've been on it through our CEO, Vittorio, attending various meetings and discussing it. And I think there are three things in the few minutes that I want to say. Firstly, if you looked at the company and went in, there is a stated purpose within Vodafone. We have values, we have code of conduct. There is a stated purpose. And the purpose of the company is to empower everybody to be confidently connected. So if you looked at 120,000 employees serving 430 million customers globally and asked them what the purpose of the company is, that is where they would then refer. If you then said, what does it sort of feel like, you would get different reactions. If you went to Kenya, where 10,000 people are joining the internet every day thanks to Vodafone through Safaricom, then you would get a sense of we're bringing the internet to Africa, an extraordinary purpose, so that we meet customers who 1 minute have very little access to the written word and the next day have access to every piece of written word that has ever been written by the internet. If you talk to a lot of employees, one of the things that we've done in the foundation space that resonates very strongly, which I'm also responsible for, is a program on domestic violence. So we introduced a handset for women at risk of domestic violence in Spain 7 years ago. And the Spanish authorities said, we have a fixed line alarm system, but we don't have a mobile system. Will you develop a mobile system? Basically, at the push of a central button, it opens a direct line to the police via 999. Through the preordination of that number, the police know who the person is, where the person is, and they have all the notes associated with the case. So leapfrogging all the usual activity that would be associated. If you ask people within Spain, and it's now in 6 European markets, 40,000 women have it, 4,000 here in the UK this morning, then people would probably go to that narrative and story. So we have a purpose. How well we're delivering on that purpose is obviously up to our customers to decide, but there is a clear stated purpose, which is my first point. The second point about the blueprint, just reading it and being involved in the conversations, one of the things I think it really does well is it focuses on the why rather than the what and the how. Okay, and it moves, I think businesses, I'm not sure about other businesses, but businesses are great at what and how, and sometimes the why needs to be brought much more back into focus. And we've seen that in the area I'm responsible for, which is sustainability and responsibility. So if you went back 2001, say, to 2007, and there are many leaders of that area in the room that I can see, we were very focused on reporting. What we do, what we don't do, that was very much the era. If you move 2007 beyond, the company was much more focused on sustainability. How do we use our products and services to make a difference in the world? And one of the things that came out of the corporate responsibility team at that time was M-Pesa, the mobile money transfer system, which $1 billion a month is now going through that transfer system and is changing lives for the unbanked in extraordinary ways in many parts of the world. So for us, where we see the blueprint and where the conversation is really important is because I think for us and for the leadership of Vodafone, we see companies that are successful going forward will ask two simple questions: where the world's going and what's our role in it? And the blueprint, I think, is intimately engaged in that space because actually it really refocuses on the why. There's a lot in the blueprint that isn't new. Those of us who've been in this space for some years recognize a lot of it. But I think the power of the blueprint is that it really focuses much more on the why. And then my third and final point is, what are we going to do? Well, we've been developing it in conversations. We're going to audit against the activity, and we will use it to challenge our behaviours and beliefs further. And if I can say one further point, just to sort of confuse you, in terms of the words and purpose, if you ask me personally, rather than as a representative of the company, what does Vodafone stand for? I would say Vodafone deals in the stuff of humanity, namely the ability to communicate one with another. I know there are other things that are intrinsic to being human, but for me, our company enables people to communicate. That is what it's all about. And it really came through to me very powerfully. We do a literacy program in Egypt, and 240,000 people since the revolution have been on this literacy program using mobile devices, where we teach them to basic read and write. And I went to one school 100k south of Cairo, and I met this lady, and the class was going on, and we had a sort of one-to-one through an interpreter as to why she wanted to learn to read and write. So I said, why do you want to learn to read and write? And she said, she wasn't particularly religiously dressed. She said, I want to learn to read and write because I'd like to read the Quran. I'd like to be able to read bus stop signs and timetables and so on. And then she said, I'd also like to be able to learn to read and write because I don't want my children to have the same disability that I've had. And then she paused, and I knew there was more to come, but I wasn't quite sure what it was, so I just sat and waited. She said, I'd also like to learn to read and write because I don't have a phone, but my husband has a mobile phone, and I'd like to read the texts on his mobile phone. And I knew at that moment we shared the same purpose.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Very good. Alex, you're the owner of Rugs of Petworth, small business.
Tiny, very, very small business, yeah.
So what does the blueprint principles mean to you, and to what extent are you trying to put them in place?
I first started talking to Lachlan about this probably about 3 years ago, and he was encouraging me to consider the purpose of my business at that time.
He was a customer?
Originally, yeah, he wandered into the rug shop. And,
dangerous man.
And I became, maybe a little test project for how a very small business perhaps could follow this blueprint. And so about 2 years ago, we finished developing a purpose statement, which took a long time, and there were lots of challenges to what I thought the purpose of the business was along the way. When we finally refined it all the way down, I then realised that I had to now implement it. But that was quite scary because I realised that what I'd set out to do, I was quite passionate about handmade rugs, which is what we do. And what I'd started out passionate about, I drifted off course, and the business that I'd built wasn't the business that I had hoped for. There were other product lines in the mix because there had to be. I was chasing sales in other areas. We were doing fitted carpets. We were doing all sorts of things that weren't to do with beautiful handmade rugs. So I knew that getting back on course was going to be a challenge, and was it possible? Is there valid demand for what I want to do? And once I was persuaded that there was, realigning the business to it was, I knew I was going to have to drop product lines and lose sales. So keeping the lights on during the transition for me was the big challenge. Very, very small business, no big cushion sitting behind it or anything like that. The purpose kind of flows through our company now in several ways, but the example I'd like to give is of recruitment, because that's about people. I knew that I needed some help to deliver the purpose and to bring aboard somebody who could share the passion I've got for the product, so that it wasn't just me doing it, and I was, until then, employing people to help me, and they would come and not be too interested in go. So we developed what I thought was a really inspiring recruitment document, and had two really good candidates came forward. A year ago, a lady called Angie came and joined the team, and at the same time, a 20-year-old lad who lives locally, Charlie. He, at the same time, had come along and said, this sounds great, I want to be involved in something exciting, and I want something that I can put my talents and skills towards. But I couldn't employ two people. But thankfully, when I went back in the summer this year, Charlie was still keen, and now we're able to employ both him and Angie. I will also say that holding the company to purpose is their job, and they do it. We've been nudged a couple of times where we've been discussing showroom layout and what's going to go where, and Charlie will turn to me and say, well, why is that going to go in the prime bit of retail space? That's got nothing to do with beautiful handmade rugs, which is what I thought I was signing up for. So I have to say, well, yeah, okay. Knowing in my mind that's actually a really valuable revenue stream, very important, and I could justify keeping it there if I wanted to. You could justify anything if you wanted to, because it's important revenue that helps us deliver the purpose in other areas. But I knew that wasn't good enough. So on that occasion, Charlie held me true to the purpose. So that's just one example of how it's helped us. And I'd say that in general, overall, it's given us a confidence and a clarity over what we do. It's easier to communicate to our customers what it is we do, and it's easy for us to understand the business inside it as well. And the confidence that's brought us this year enabled us to expand the business, buy the premises next door, and for the first time reach out for investment to grow the business as well. So I'm really pleased to be involved.
Are you still fitting carpets?
No. No, thankfully.
Right, very interesting indeed. Really interesting. And Paul Feeney, Chief Executive of Old Mutual Wealth, and you've been on a journey.
Thank you, John. Yes, I have been on a journey. Started about 2.5 years ago. And I was interested in what James said before about whether you could build an investment management business which really serves society. That's certainly not where I started out 2.5 years ago. 2.5 years ago, I started out with taking over the business, which was predominantly a group of insurance businesses and platforms called the Scandia Group, and had a vision to turn it into more of what I called a vertically integrated wealth management and asset management business. So I went along and spoke to the stock market with my team about that, and they got it: vertical integration, wealth management, asset management, these returns on equity, this return on investment, this sort of profit, blah, blah, blah. Great, get on with it, Paul. So then I was busy doing that. I thought, well, I better try and engage obviously engage my staff. So I went and spoke to a few thousand employees around the world, and I had all these employee engagement sessions. I said, right, we are building a modern, vertically integrated wealth management and asset management company. Let's go! And that is exactly the response I got, which was, so what? And I'll hold it. But in fact, I told a little story last time I was here last year, which is very true, which was at the end of one of the sessions where I had, blinding apathy, was one of my employees, a lady, said to me, "Paul, do you have some time for me?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And so she took me down into the, to cut the story short, took me down into the underground car park. So I thought my time is really up. It was I didn't think it was quite that bad a speech, but took me down there, out into the back, and said, "Paul, what do you see?" And I looked around. I thought, this is quite weird. I see some cars. I see a skip. At that particular office, there's surrounded by tall buildings, so you couldn't see much else. And she said, "Fine," and brought me back into the building, up to the 6th floor, where we have a whole wall of windows looking out on the same side of the building. And she said, "No, what do you see?" I said, "Well, I can see the skip down there and the cars. But I can see the harbour, and I can see the New Forest over there." And she said, "Paul, same view, different perspective." And it really hit me. She said, "Look, you have got the perspective, but you're not communicating it. And if you feel you're communicating it, it's not resonating with us. Because we can kind of see your construct, but we don't really know why. We don't really know why we're building a modern vertically integrated wealth management and asset management, or even whether we should be." And it really struck me. So anyway, we worked hard and basically talked to people. Through circuitous routes, found Blueprint for Better Business. And it made me really think about purpose. And for me, purpose, you can have a purpose, but if people don't engage with it, and if it doesn't resonate, and if it doesn't mobilize people, well, it's pretty irrelevant. So our purpose now is to build the leading investment management business in the UK by enabling positive futures for all of our customers, employees, and our society. Now, that came about by this process. Then we said, well, what does that actually mean? And how do we mobilize? So that resonated more with people. How do we create positive futures? I'm not someone down in our Southampton call centres. Well, I'm not an asset manager. Is it all about asset managers? So we worked hard on that and said, no, what does it mean? How would we make every single person engage in that? And how do we make it real for them? So another speech I gave recently, and I'll try to very briefly say it was very different to the first one. It was to say, here's who we're building our company for and what we're trying to build our company for. Because I found out if you try to deliver a message which reaches everybody, you'll probably reach nobody. And if you try to stand for something which everyone's happy with, you'll end up standing for nothing. So in a certain way, purpose, in a certain extent, does exclude. Because if it's inclusive for everybody, it becomes so watered down that it doesn't really mean anything. So, I recently came up with wrote a little poem. I thought it is all about engagement. It's all about caring. So I said, instead of that sort of corporate speech, I thought, at the end of the day, you've got to show yourself warts and all. So I wrote this little poem. Don't worry, I'm not hearing voices. Just But I said, here's to the change makers, to the determined and the brave, to those who guard our children's future, who stand apart and make a stand, to those who built their lives with their own hands and now seek to build a better one for their children, to those who ask why not and never accept because, to those who strive to succeed, to contribute, sometimes just to survive, but always share their lot, to the responsible ones, to those whose values are their wealth, irrespective of the value of their wealth. Their word is their bond, and they expect nothing less in return. These are the people we build our company for, who invest for the future to build a better world. Now, I wrote that not because of sort of corporate ego, but just tried to connect. And the reaction we've had in our business with the change in shift in terms of how we communicate and engage. So we're trying to build an investment management business that makes a difference for people who want to make a difference with their money. Now, some people just want to build more money. And to a certain extent, they probably won't think of us that much then, in that respect. But for those who really want to make a difference with their money, And that means we will exclude certain investments. We won't invest in certain sectors. It means we will invest in a certain way. I'll give you an example. We said to ourselves, right, we're all change makers. So if we're a change maker, what would we do with our products? So we launched a very major new product earlier in this year called Wealth Select. And we said, well, okay, we're going to sign up obviously to the UN PRI, responsible investing. However, this product's going to involve a number of other major investment houses. Why would we work with those houses if they've not also signed up to the UN PRI and are doing it? So James's business has gone over from BlackRock is also one of the signatories that we've signed up. So now anyone who buys that investment knows not only how we've priced it, no front-end fees, all transparent, but also everybody, every investment or every firm within that product is at least trying to invest responsibly, and they've signed up to that process. So this is the journey that I think we've been on. So, you know, as we've said at the same time, we've said to the market, if I went to the stock market and said, we're building a really great responsible investment business and that would be great, and please can you give me X £100 million to do it, they'd say no, probably. So we have said we will also return to you minimum £300 million of profit next year. But we take 3 years to build that from where we were 3 years ago, which was a fraction of that. Now I can't, we've got investment managers in the room, but we will hit that. But we'll do it in a way of how we're building, you know, this business. So the big part of the journey for me a little bit has been not so much, first of all, the purpose, although that was a real, you know, road to Damascus moment for me, but it's been that the purpose itself isn't enough. It's how you engage your employees, your market, to actually mobilize that purpose. And that has to become something that we do every day in our normal lives, which is connect with people. And to do that, you've got to have a certain vulnerability, I think, and because that's what people connect with. That's our journey.
Thank you very, very much. Well, 4 really interesting offerings there, except I think you've got one more step, which would be to perhaps change your name from Old Mutual Wealth to New Mutual.
Yes, middle-aged mutual, I think.
Who was there in the audience want to pick holes in any of these offerings or build upon them? There's a hand at the back there. Yeah, let's take that one, please. And then there's one down the front row, if you can be ready for that, please.
Thanks, John. I'm Frank Hart. I'm the Cabinet Member for Social Inclusion in Liverpool City Council. So I wouldn't want to engage in a competition about who's the most unpopular amongst journalists or energy companies, but as politicians, we're pretty high on the unpopularity stakes, I would suggest. I want to go back to trust and transparency and say that in Liverpool, we've got a Liverpool Schools Parliament, and we use it quite a lot as a sounding board to talk to the young people in the city. And they really bring you up short on many occasions. And I've been worried and concerned about the number of young people who've lost trust in all organisations, you know, the church, private sector, the local authority, central government, whatever. I think that's really worrying for us as a society. And I'd be interested in what the panel think about what they could do from their perspective to try and get young people thinking again that there is a purpose to what we know for our society and it's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And another question here.
I'm Jill Pope from the Organisation for Responsible Businesses, and we work predominantly with SMEs, but really the small end. And I think we need to be phrasing this question slightly differently. We've seen 4 very interesting examples, particularly keen to hear Alex talking. Your long sort of phrase was talking about mobilising the purpose. So my question is, if I can take the liberty, first of all, of reminding the delegates or everyone here that 99.3% of private businesses in the UK are actually small businesses, less than 50 employees. So how can we mobilise those small businesses to understand that they need to be putting purpose into practice in their business? So I wonder if any of the panel have got any suggestions. in that respect.
Let's deal with those two areas first. Mistrust in organisations, all organisations. It's interesting, I interviewed Kate Tempest, another poet, last night because she'd been nominated
as good as
Mercury
me.
Prize. And when I asked her, because she's a social activist, what she was worried about, she said precisely that young people are really mistrustful of all organisations. How do you rebuild? How do you generate in young people who know very little about organisations very often that there's something there with soul?
I think you have to bring them into the you have to bring them in. We work a lot with the Social Mobility Foundation. All of our internship programs now, we take over half people who've not been to university, who often have come from disadvantaged backgrounds. And I can tell you, we've just the program that we just finished this year, where we had about 30 of those interns, and they're fabulous. And the ones who've done best and we've actually hired and taken on, most of those have been from disadvantaged backgrounds who don't even have degrees. And I asked one of them recently why that was, how he felt about coming in. And he said, well, other people who were on the intern program, some are from Oxford, Cambridge, what have you, this was an option. They were thinking whether they wished to join this particular investment firm. For me, this was my one shot. And so I think firms have to think that we can't just get our young people from the traditional routes. And as long as we can do that, and our experience has been it's highly successful, then I think we can make a bit of a contribution that way.
Trust in Centrica, young people.
So we are obviously a huge employer here in the UK, and last year we employed 3,000 16 to 24-year-olds, and we did a lot of work with young people in schools talking about energy and what energy might mean for them. But I guess my very illuminating engagement was with a group of 16 to 24-year-olds in Brixton that we met who are not employed and were willing to have a conversation with us and about energy and our purpose and role in society. And we had a conversation with them. They said, well, all we know about you is that my mum can't pay the bills, the media say you're awful and that fracking's bad. That's what I know. And so we had an hour conversation, and by the end of it they said, why don't you just say everything we love you make work? And I went, that's really enlightening and illuminating. In that, we overcomplicate these things, and actually when we want to engage young people, especially in the future economy, there's going to be so many skills required. And I was at the Emerge conference this weekend in Skull, for those of you that don't know. It's about young people who want to get into work that is going to make a profound difference. And I think that all companies need to recognise, to the point you made as well about small businesses, that most young people want to work for a company that they can identify with, that means something to them. And when they're in their social media, on Facebook, they're spending less than 30 seconds engaging with something. So they're not going to come and work for you unless they can motivationally buy into what you're doing. So I think that's how you can win.
Alex, small businesses, actually influencing other small businesses, as the questioner suggested.
Yeah, I think I'd be interested to know what the blueprint kind of strategy is from here with this, because obviously I stumbled into this, and I'm a big advocate. There's the way it's set up. The question I asked Lockton quite early on was, so where do I find a trainer? Is there going to be an accredited trainer scheme? And of course the answer is no. But there's some immersion schemes coming up. So am I right in thinking then that private training companies will buy into the idea and then roll it out? Yeah. So I think that'd be a really good thing. But also just how this is exposed to small businesses, I'd be interested to know. I don't have the answer, but I think it's a very worthwhile question.
Andrew, anything from you?
Well, on transparency, I mean, I think is a great question. And in the last 12 months, we've published the first ever full tax report on every market in which we operate. So, I mean, a couple of transparency things we published this year: every market in which we operate, every payment of tax that we make. In terms of the law enforcement disclosure report, which we published, that some of you have covered, again, we have published this year for the first time every market in which we operate, every government request, every legal framework we work in terms of as a communications company. I think on the young people, yeah, I'm father of 4 teenagers, so you get quite a lot of it at home, you know, in terms of feedback and reaction. And my sense in terms of the next generation is that because they've grown up through the internet, in a communications age, they're much better at filtering things than I am. So I get overloaded by the vast amounts of communication that come through, but they seem to be able to filter this far quicker and assess it. And that's one thing I find from young people who I meet either through work or through feedback from a robust community at home. And then I think the second thing that I would say on young people is I think they're more purpose-driven than us. So there may be pockets where through education, through economic activity and so on, but I think more and more of the next generation seem to be much more interested in purpose-driven dialogue almost than the generation that I'm from.
I was very interested in your reference to Africa and the fact that you saw this as a sort of proof of your you keep that because that's good. Are we all done, or we all have to use this? Well, okay. I saw this as interesting because you saw it as a degree of altruism in it, taking the business to Africa in the way we were. And then I thought about GDP in Africa, which is running at 5% growth. And I thought, no, actually, I think if I were Vodafone, I would go to Africa and I would be motivated by making a profit. Because suddenly you've got a market that's never had any of this stuff before, and they're beginning to get some money. So, I mean, is that a cruel and cynical observation?
No, you can look at our annual accounts and look at the revenue generation from the emerging markets where 70% of our customers are. So I don't think that's a cruel analysis, and businesses go where customers are based. I think what's really interesting, aligned to that point that came up in the earlier session, is do you link purpose and reputation? Mm-hmm. Okay, can you link, the concept of purpose and reputation management? Reputation management for all the companies on the stage, large and small, is a fiduciary responsibility. A lot of the value of a company is associated with the brand, and a lot of the brand value is associated with reputation management. But for me, I think the two should be completely apart. You have a purpose, and that purpose is to deliver communications, to enable people to be connected, which is the essence of humanity. And you will have reputation storms of one way or the other. NGOs represented in this room will have exactly the same issues. That doesn't deflect you from the purpose, and the purpose shouldn't be directly linked to reputation management. I think there's a Catholic doctrine of foreseen but unintended effect, which I think is the principle of double effect. The principle of double effect. So you have a foreseen. It may have an impact on reputation, but the intention why you do purpose is not reputation management. The intention is that is what the company's about. Any
quick points from the floor? There's one right at the back there, please. Anybody else, so we get the microphone lined up on you? Yeah, the lady in the other row as well, please.
Just to say, we have actually taken framework principles to SMEs and found they generally find it easier to work with than large business has. They like it, and in the community where we've piloted it, it's made a real difference to how business people work together. Just a bit of information.
Thank you very much. And then there's just one, there's two women. We'll take both, one on each side and a third one at the front, and then that's the end.
Virginie Roel-Lacaille. I was wondering if thinking about putting purpose in practice couldn't be helped by by storytelling in a way. It's telling the story of the company, and anybody who works in a company can then then support that story or harm it by their behaviour. So it's a different logic from metrics or measurements. It's more of a narrative approach. Is that helpful too?
Good, yes, a very good point. Storytelling, and then there's another one there. And then if you could bring that other mic back down here to the second row.
Caroline spoke up from a call to action for the common good, and I think it's inspiring to hear these examples, and important to hear about discussions with staff and how that's helped to revitalise purpose. But when you look at the purpose here, it operates true to a purpose that serves society, respects dignity of people, and so generates a fair return for responsible investors. So my kind of observation is defeating more dialogue with people in society, and starting with customers. Perhaps the conversations which are happening with staff are in the comfort zone. Perhaps one needs to move a little bit outside of that comfort zone.
Thank you very much. And a final point here.
I wanted to ask whether or not...
Could you just say who you are? Yeah.
So, Nicola Jones, in Centrica. I wanted to ask whether or not Blueprint had engaged at all with government in terms of working out a way to incentivise companies to adopt a purpose-led blueprint, in terms of being assessed, say, in terms of taxation, that if they are, that they should be rewarded for being responsible citizens, for their sustainability, for environmentally friendly policies, and that they should be assessed surely just on a wider series of measures rather than just on the income that they generate.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So, storytelling narrative. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think. I borrow yours. Hello. Try this. Yep. I think the storytelling is a great point, and the power of stories is that they go into your conscience and your heart without asking for any permission to enter there. Okay, so I give you a briefing or an update on what Vodafone does, and you are processing it academically, intellectually, and in every way. I tell you a story, it goes far deeper than any briefing I can, because I don't understand why, but it doesn't ask for permission, it just goes straight in. And therefore, storytelling is an incredibly powerful way of communicating some of this sort of activity. The problem is a lot of companies are based in a contractual culture, and therefore, I find when you tell a story, you go into a deficit, and then there is a moment when you come out of the deficit and people connect and engage. But I think storytelling is an incredibly powerful tool in changing the culture of a company. 5 years ago, we flipped the foundation program in Vodafone, so we give away about £45 million per annum in direct cash, and we felt it wasn't really connecting enough with our 100,000 plus employees primarily. And we did three things. We reduced the overall amount because too many people have too much communication. We secondly connected it to our technology, and then we thirdly focused on doing something out there rather than just incremental change. But the second one, when you tell a story to an employee like the Texos handset I told you, or other stories of how the technology and the work that they're doing every day of the week makes a difference in society, the connection is very emotional, very limbic, and has results on which you can trade.
Alex, do you have a dialogue with your customers? Do you ask them what they think of the layout of the showroom?
I've got a mic, thanks. Yeah, yes, we do. It's a very, very small boutique business. We talk a lot to our customers. They know us. That's why it was so important for me to get the right people in the showroom to convey the passion for the product. But you know, and our purpose statement is partly about helping people to understand the product. We exist in an industry where there's probably quite a low, consumer education. So we're trying to help people be confident to furnish their homes with this artisan product, handmade rugs, and at the same time, part of our purpose is to, as a result of that, to uphold the integrity and the craftsmanship at the other end. So, but that kind of starts in the showroom with our staff. So that was the first conversation. They're the people that are actually going to deliver the purpose.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then there was the final question, which is about the evaluation of a company and its purpose and its performance that goes beyond, its profitability and the rest of it. I mean, society, our system at the moment just tells us, well, they're doing jolly well, they're half much wider assessment of a company that would take in its social responsibility, its relationship with its customers. What do you think, Paul?
I think so. I think absolutely so. I think in a way we've started by, with our purpose, balancing it. So in one hand saying we're building the leading investment management company in the UK. That's for the, if you like, if those who want the ROEs and the returns on investments and the profits, there you go. But we're going to do it in a way which enables positive futures for all of our customers, employees, and society. So the types of products we build. So that has led us to something. So there's another question for James from BlackRock earlier on about, well, I'm beating the market. I want to beat the market. And that's fine for a fund manager, but real people don't wake up every morning and go, God, I must beat the S&P 500 today, or I got to beat the FTSE, or what I really need is some Japanese small cap. No real person ever says that. They say, I hope I've got enough money to live on. I hope I can look after my parents. I hope I can pay the mortgage. I hope I've got enough money in retirement. This is what real people say. So the way we're building our company and our product mantra is real solutions for real people. So we'll build solutions which do that. So, and I think when we go back to the market at the end of next year and they'll judge us, we want to be judged on two things. Clearly they'll look at the hard metrics, but if we deliver those hard metrics and don't deliver the way, the type of company we're saying, certainly I won't get paid, and nor will any of my team. So that part is really important.
And finally, Julie.
Yeah, I think that the way we're thinking about this very much is that we track all of the inputs, the transformation, and the outputs. And what companies get measured on at the moment is a lot of their activity-based activities. And what we're working on currently is thinking about how do we measure the activities, the outcomes of those, the outputs of those, and then the impacts that has in a correlatory fashion to enable employees to understand how what they do contributes further. It's not easy. And I was very impressed by the work that had happened earlier around purpose in action and how you measure that from an external perspective. But I think companies need to be thinking about how they do that from an internal perspective.
Well, thank you all very much, and thank you very much indeed for your questions and your attentiveness. There is now lunch, and is it on this floor or downstairs? Downstairs, lunch. The loos, some may not know, are also right down in the basement as well as on this floor. When I went down there was nobody there at all. I thought, gosh, the other ones must be very crowded. So I'm afraid that's my departure. I've got to go and do my day job. But Christopher will take over as chairman